Hey guys, I'm Heintje, and in my last video, or second to last by now, I went from day 1 to day 3 of the weekend. I also went from this to this. On day 2 of the trip I went to Bikepark La Bresse. As you already could have seen, that day turned out to be a huge confidence booster. In this video I'll show what happened and what crazy features I rode that day. Of course, after the intro. I'm sure by now you know I started with warming up on some easy trails, to then go for a scouting run on the red trail. If there's ever a park where it's important to scout the lines and features, this is it. What I said in my previous video about this place still stands true. La Bresse is truly a spot for the more experienced riders to progress even further. Almost everything is built in a way that doesn't boost the confidence of beginners. However, the sketchy way of building makes it quite a challenge without going insanely big. Don't get me wrong though, some features are big.
Yeah!
Speaking of big features, after my warm-up and scouting runs I met up with Jelle once again to create some content, as he likes to call it. And so we did. We went straight for the red line to the right of the park. A tag line with some jumps. Here a set of 2 jumps. The first one seems doable, the second one looks very tricky.
Oké, die is goed te proberen.
Let me be straight up about it. We only rode this trail once, so I didn't get to session these. But these jumps aren't what we're here for. No, we came for the drop at the end.
Ja.
Het is groot.
Ja.
Ah man, dat kan je wel, het is groot.
Ja hè?
Ja.
Let's start by looking at the run-in. Not as straightforward as with most features. Precisely what I mean with La Bresse is for the experienced riders. Now the drop itself. This one is being quite far for the height, aka a high speed drop.
Ja.
Again, I know I have the skills, and again, the hard part is judging the speed needed. So first I did a couple of run-ups, see how much speed I could carry through the run-up. I still tapped the brake slightly, but fortunately there is room to put in a couple of cranks.
Rem.
This time Jelle was willing to provide me with a toe-in, that gave me enough confidence to go for it.
Zonder angst, hè?
Ja.
Yes.
I can't say why this one feels so much easier than the road gap in La Bresse. I think from the end of the drop to the landing is about the same distance. Maybe it's because this one isn't as high. Now, I'm not afraid of heights, but I do get more and more careful the higher I get. Also, this one being in the forest makes it way less exposed. Anyway, once done, this one is fun to do multiple times, so I walked back up and did it again and again, until I lost the will to walk back up. More or less starting the day with a first hand of a feature like this could only be a good sign of things to come, or a source of overconfidence. Time to move on to the next feature, or better said, a set of features. The table line under the lift. This one starts however with another drop, a mandatory drop for the jump line. Again, I did my due diligence, first checking it out on foot. I have to say, after the drop I just did, this one didn't seem too much of an issue. So let's move on and check out the first jump as well.
Nou, het is toch nog een metertje verder dan je denkt, hè?
Ja, maar gewoon een dipje.
Echt mega mellow.
With that in mind, it was time to go for it, feeling confident enough that I didn't need a toe in. And yes, the drop was easy. However, at this point I didn't dare to commit to the jumps. Looks like the drop provides plenty of speed for the jump, but this is one of those, what I would like to call them, a 25-90 table. If you go slow, below 25% of the needed speed, you can roll them easily. And you go with 90% or more speed, you might case, but nothing too bad. However, the range between 25 and 90% is risky. At those speeds it's more of a drop to flat than a jump, to then immediately be followed up by a second drop from the deck of the table to the landing. In my next run I used the power of a toe-in once again, so let me give a huge shout out to Jelle. Again, he helped me enormous this day. Although in this section it became very clear that he is the better jumper of us two. I noticed that I was closing the gap, so he was going slower, yet clearing all the jumps with ease. I guess I'm still relying more on speed than on skill. If you would like to see more of the master himself, just give him a follow on Instagram. I'm sure he liked that. Yeah, they're mellow, but they're also big. In my previous video I stated that I didn't like the fact that I put a gap drop in front of the table line. Back then I thought everyone can try to jump a table, but not everyone dares to jump a gap. So I block off an easy feature with a squirrel catcher. Now 2 years and a lot of experience later, it all makes sense. You need a ton of commitment in order to clear at least at 90% of the tables, making them easily accessible would only lead to crashes and wearing out of the jumps. During the day I got to clearing the first 3 jumps of the line, the 4th one I just couldn't get. I kept casing it, and with that case I didn't have the confidence to go for the step up at the end. Nonetheless, this whole line was another huge confidence booster for me. Time to move on to the next trail. Time to move on to the black rated trail, Express.
Express. Oké, simpel. Ja.
This one starts off as a technical jump trail, meaning the jumps are not that straightforward, but they're not too big, so after, of course, scouting them out first, they were easy to clear.
Ja, nou ja.
While I show that, let me be so bold to ask for a subscription. I spend a lot of time making these videos. If you appreciate my work, you can show your gratitude by hitting that subscribe button. The next section of this trail has some bigger jumps. Jumps where you have to hit the previous one in order to be able to clear the next one. I'll be coming back to this section later.
Die is een stukje groter geworden.
For now, let's have some fun on some skinnies. Although fun, the mud was too slow rolling to get the speed to make these features any kind of fun. Or maybe the downhill bike is just too much here. Probably both.
Deze is ook al te
Then
doen.
a couple of jumps where I
meer sneller
definitely
dan dit.
didn't have the speed for. Later we came to a section that I sessioned during my previous visit, and back then I was very proud to dare to commit to these gap jumps. So I would think that they're easy by now, only this time it was slightly wet. However, this didn't stop me from giving them a try.
Nee, maar het was niet...
First attempt I barely made it over the tiny jump. After that just checking out the line. Now it's wet, it's scary to commit for a gap jump on wet roads. Next attempt, this time clearing the tiny jump and trying out the line for the bigger one. I want to approach that one as straight as possible. So now let's go for it. The one thing I didn't want to happen, happened. I slipped away on the roots, putting me off and aborting my attempt. At this point I decided it was not worth going for this one. Maybe again, the downhill bike is too heavy for this feature. Last time I was on my e-bike, making it easy to get up to speed. Too bad, but let's not push for features if I don't feel it. Even if I've done them in the past, instead, let's move on to the next features. First a drop followed up by a big double. My confidence on drops is pretty good. At this point this one wasn't any issue and I went for it straight away. The jump however, is probably just as easy, only so much scarier in my mind. I feel there's so much more that can go wrong on a jump than on a drop, so in order to commit to this jump, I once again relied on the help from Jelle. I think a toe-in would make all the difference, but first a demonstration from the master. After he saw me nailing the drop, he knew I would have enough speed to clear the jump. Trusting his judgment, I went for it. Maybe a tiny bit of a case, but I made it. One more victory. There's one thing I didn't notice during my preparation, only after I landed the jump. There's a freaking tree literally straight after the jump, and it doesn't even have an orange pillow around it. I guess you just have to steer. Once again proving my point about La Bresse. If you're confident on a feature, they find a way to make it just a bit sketchy and challenging. Now let's move up a bit to the upper section I skipped earlier. Here you have a sort of river gap that looks doable, even without the help of Jelle.
Een stukje groter geworden.
Die is ook wel serieus, ja. Maar voor mij...
The jump itself is very straightforward and the run-up doesn't look too bad either. There's a bridge that you can jump, but I feel rolling it and then giving a few good cranks would be enough.
Het is fucking end.
Jumping the bridge would be a better option, for sure. However, the one is trickier than it seems at first. The jump is straight, but the landing is a bit angled to the left. Then after a couple of run-ups I finally went for it. Normally I would just jump a bit to the left and land in the middle of the landing. However, here I was afraid to hit the railing of the bridge, so I didn't commit to the jump and more or less rolled the bridge. I'm sure you can already tell it was a huge case from the POV footage. How big of a case it actually was, let's look at it from the side. And now from the other side. Here you can really see that my front wheel barely made it to the top of the knuckle, and my back wheel, let's say I'm once again very happy with the 200mm of suspension on this bike. Now you might think this was a confidence killer, but no. I realized I lacked a bit of speed, so this was a good lesson for me. I know it was a lesson that could have cost me dearly, but since I rode away from it, it only boosted my confidence in the bike. Let's hope this will not come back to haunt me one day. Anyway, that's all I did this day that eventually led me to doing the road gap in La Bresse. I did do some other features that I'm showing you now. And while I do so, let me end the video. Please, if you liked the video, feel free to let me know by hitting that like button. Have you been to La Bresse? If so, I'm curious to hear what you think about the park. I think it's a great park in its own kind of niche. It's not so much a park you spend a lot of days a year in, but it's fun to visit every once in a while and see where you stand. As always, thank you so very much for watching all the way to the end. That means a lot to me. I hope to see you back for my next video, hopefully soon. Until then, have fun riding. Houdoe. Oh, and Jelle, I can't state enough how grateful I am for all the patience and help you gave me these days. However, I can't resist to put in this silly clip. Sorry.
Ik moet niet remmen op hout.